What would the average American think if he or she could see what his or her government is doing to someone who has done no crimes against anybody? If people in the Arab world knew what was happening in this place, the hatred against the U.S. would be heavily watered, and the accusations that the U.S. is helping and working together with dictators in our countries would be cemented. Those are the words of Mohamedou Slahi, who is known as the most tortured man in Guantanamo history, despite, get this, never being charged with a single crime. How do I know this? Well, I read his diary, his memoir, The Mauritanian. It exposes the brutal realities inside the facility. But not just that. It also serves as a warning to what these brutal realities could turn into for everyday Americans. So why are we talking about this? Well, I'm sure that you've noticed Guantanamo Bay has been in the news due to Donald Trump and his plans to expand the detention facility. And not just for suspected terrorists, as it has been, but for supposedly high-threat migrants. Okay, so what's the danger? Why should you care? Well, I would say for America, since the war on terror, the crimes of Guantanamo have really come back to haunt us. And imagine repeating those same mistakes on a much larger scale. So today, with the help of this just excellent, gripping memoir, we are going to reveal how Guantanamo 2.0, as we're calling it, it might not make Americans safer. In fact, it could actually put everyday Americans in extreme danger. So buckle up, because we are about to dive head first into the dangers of Guantanamo Bay. Welcome to Bookwise. I am your host, Britt Brewer, aka Dr. Books. I am not a licensed medical professional. I am not, but you guys are all going to be replaced by AI anyway. Just kidding. Not really. But what I am is an avid reader, and I help you, the audience, make sense of current events through books. I read them, and then I talk about them. And we all make sense. We all process this crazy world together. So today we're talking about Guantanamo 2.0. And in case you're not maybe familiar with what's happening, that's okay. You were watching Love is Blind. I do not blame you, but let me fill you in. What are the Trump administration's plans for Guantanamo? So his 2025 plan for Guantanamo Bay, it involves expanding its migrant detention facility to hold up to 30,000 people, focusing on what he calls the worst criminal illegal aliens. Now, currently, Migrant Operations Center at Guantanamo holds up to 2,500 detainees, which means Trump's plan would be a 12x increase on the number of migrant detainees. So I don't really math, but that feels like a lot of math. Just saying. And this is all part of the Trump administration's broader crackdown on immigration. And to be expected, yes, it has already sparked some major controversy. How do they say it on the BBC? Controversy and legal challenges. So now that you're sort of filled in enough, let's get into the 3 reasons why Guantanamo, or how Guantanamo 2.0 could put everyday Americans in danger. First and foremost, this could seed anti-American extremism. If migrants, many of whom are fleeing violence and economic instability, which another day over drinks or coffee, I could talk to you about what the CIA did in South America in the 1980s and how maybe that is connected to what's happening right now, but that's another time and another day. But if those migrants who are fleeing violence and economic instability, maybe created by the U.S., are treated as criminals and detained indefinitely, some of them might turn against the U.S. after release. And then this could also lead to the potential for terror recruits, because groups like ISIS, heard of them, Al-Qaeda, heard of them, and drug cartels, they have historically exploited disenfranchised and abused detainees for recruitment. And this would not be the first time this happened, because the U.S., you bet, has a history of blowback. Past detainees from Guantanamo have joined anti-US extremist movements. And a new wave of detained migrants could trigger a very, very similar backlash. So, all right, what can we learn from this book that speaks to this kind of seeding of anti-American extremism? Well, I would say one of the big insights that I took away from this book is that indefinite detention and torture at Guantanamo, it radicalized individuals who were previously, they weren't even extremists. And even the author, Slahi, who was innocent, he describes how anger, injustice, and dehumanization inside Guantanamo, it drove some detainees towards serious anti-American sentiment. So what are some potential real-world consequences? Increased anti-American extremism. The U.S. could face more foreign fighters motivated by their mistreatment at Guantanamo. Then what could also happen? Well, groups like ISIS, terrorist organizations, they can frame the U.S. as an oppressor, boosting their recruitment efforts. And if you know anything about ISIS recruitment, it is on a level that we've never seen before. I mean, it is beyond Hollywood cinematic. It is pretty crazy. Also, it could lead to stronger anti-US coalitions. Adversarial nations such as Russia, Iran, China, they could weaponize US abuses in the propaganda wars. And in this our great attention economy, propaganda wars will be raging and raging hard. So what else? How could Guantanamo increased detention put Americans at risk and in danger? Well, we could also maybe experience some retaliation from foreign governments and non-state actors. And it could provide reasons, clear rationale for retaliation against the US. Okay, so what does that have to do with Trump's plan? Well, I'll tell you. First up, China and Russia, China. That's how Trump says China. That's not how I say it. That's how he says it. Could find this very convenient to escalate human rights accusations. So just as these companies, they might be companies one day, just as these countries used Guantanamo in the past, they could label the U.S. as a global violator of human rights, making it harder for the U.S. to pressure them on issues like, say, the Uyghur detention camps or Russian political prisoners. Because they're like, you're being a little bit of a hypocrite, America. Like, look at what you're doing, Guantanamo. Do not talk to us about any of our human rights violations because you are guilty as well. This is how foreign adversaries talk. They talk like mean girls. Okay, what about terror groups? It's always a fun topic. Well, they could retaliate with violence. ISIS or new extremist groups, they could use Guantanamo as a rallying cry for future attacks. And finally, we are living in a digital world. Yep. So this could lead to cyber attacks and sabotage. Foreign intelligence agencies, which America might not even have them anymore. Listen, the deep state, stop complaining because it's going to be gone. No more deep state, just shallow state. Foreign intelligence agencies, including Russian and Iranian cyber units, they could launch cyber attacks against U.S. infrastructure. Okay? And they've done it before, and they'll do it again. Let's just take what I learned from this book. After Guantanamo, it became a symbol of American excesses. It was frequently used as propaganda by adversarial nations. Countries like China and Russia cited Guantanamo as proof that the U.S. lacks any moral authority. And while non-state actors, including militant groups, they used it to justify attacks. So, just to reiterate, to go through some potential real-world consequences, maybe this increased detention center, we could see some increased cyber attacks from adversarial nations. We could expect hacks targeting U.S. government, banks, and infrastructure, which is why you should invest in Doge. And can you still invest in the Haktua coin? Or is that no? She pumped and dumped that. Okay. And next up, potential for extremist retaliation. Terrorist groups could target the U.S. embassies, military bases, or even civilians. China, and Russia, hello, Russia, they gain political leverage. If the U.S. detains migrants at Guantanamo, China and Russia can justify their own crackdowns on dissidents by citing U.S. hypocrisy. You are being very hypocrites because of what you do in Guantanamo. Don't talk to me. Don't talk to me, Vladimir Putin. No, you are a hypocrite. So yes, that could happen. And last up, I don't mean to be such a negative Nancy, but expanding Guantanamo, this could lead to a real security nightmare. You thought you were getting safer. Turns out, nope. You are not. You are actually in more danger. How? Well, this book really exposed how Guantanamo's original purpose totally backfired on the US, leading to a global backlash, radicalization, and a diplomatic crisis. Trump's proposal to use Guantanamo for micro-detention, it risked repeating these same mistakes, but like on a much, much larger global scale. And the long-term impact, it could mean more enemies, more terrorist recruits, and a US foreign policy crisis. What, right? What's some major risk? Let's look at some different regions and how they might retaliate or how our relationship with them could change and make Americans a lot less safe. First up, let's take Latin America. We got Mexico, Colombia, Venezuela. Well, they're very likely to reject U.S. immigration enforcement. Not very likely. They could, let's say, reject U.S. immigration enforcement and frame Guantanamo as neo-colonialism. So that could happen. And then next up, we have U.S. adversaries, as we talked about, China, Russia, Iran. They could use this as a propaganda tool to attack U.S. credibility on human rights. And we could also maybe see a reaction from the Middle East or South Asia, like Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, Pakistan. This could potentially lead to increased risk of extremist retaliation and radicalization using Guantanamo as motivation because this happened in the past. And what about our friends? What about your friends? Will they stick by your side? Probably not, because even Western allies, they could respond like UK, Germany, France, Canada. They might just challenge the US on some serious legal and human rights grounds, but they also might avoid direct confrontation. They might just be like, we'll see you in court, but no, I will not take your call. Sorry, US. So, in summation, what's going to happen? Why could America be in danger? Because we could see extremism. We could face retaliation from bad actors, not just terrorist organizations, but also our adversaries. And you know what? This could really, really turn into a full-on security nightmare. And I learned all this from this book, which was also turned into an excellent movie, which I highly recommend. Guantanamo Diary, now the Mauritanian, and is also recently redacted by Mohamedou Slahi. So highly recommend this. And as always, my name is Britt Brewer, aka Dr. Books, and you've joined us for another informative episode, hopefully informative, of Bookwise by BookClub.com. And now for our moment of Zen, let's take it back to the 2000s.
Man, this is so not like me. It's like I'm a whole new Harold.
It's going to be exactly like Eurotrip, only it's not going to suck. It's going to be awesome.
It's not going to be awesome.